some long division here, so I might just give you a minute to take it down if you want to try it with me. Okay, so if you're ready, we'll give it a try now. Okay, so long division, we are dividing this part here. We're dividing that by x minus 3. So in order to set up your long division, we're taking the x cubed plus 3x squared minus 10x minus 24. And we are going to set up our division here now, and we're going to put the x minus 3 to the front of it. So I'm dividing x minus 3 into what's known as a cubic. A cubic is something that has a power of 3. Okay, so my first step here is I'm going to divide the x into the x cubed. That's my first step. Now, some people might be able to do this in their head. X goes into x cubed, x squared times. Now, if you are totally unsure how to do that, basically what you're looking at is, if you imagine you have a little bit of a rough work section out to the right-hand side, x cubed means you have 3 x's. And then I'm dividing it by this x here. So I'm putting an x here. And the bottom x will divide into one of the x's on the top, which leaves you then with these 2 x's. And 2 x's is the same as x squared. And that's where the answer on the top of the fraction is coming from. That's where the x squared is coming from. Okay. So our next step now is we are going to multiply that x squared back down by the 2 numbers here that you have divided into. So multiplying x squared by x will give you x cubed. And then multiplying the x squared by the minus 3 will give you minus 3x squared. Okay, so next step is we draw a line under that now. And what I'm going to do is I need to subtract, or I need to cancel out the x cubes. Now, in order to cancel out the x cubes, I'm focusing in on this bit here. In order to cancel them out, they have to have different signs. One of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply across by a minus. So in other words, that's changing to a minus. And then the one in the middle will change to a plus. So it's as if I'm taking them away from each other. And the x cubed will cancel out with the x cubed. They're gone. And I'm now coming to do this sum here. I have a positive 3x squared plus another 3x squared. And when I add them together, you get 6x squared. My next step then involves bringing down the minus 10x. And what I do now is I go all over again. My first step is I now want to divide this x into 6x squared. Now, I'm going to do my rough work out on the side again. So it's 6x squared divided by x. X squared means 2 x's, so x over x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel the x on the bottom with one of them on the top. And that leaves me then with 6x. And what I do is I put that on the top of my long division line. So x squared plus 6x is what I have. I'm now back to the stage of multiplying that down again. So I'm now going 6x by x, which is giving me 6x squared. And look again, you should notice that they're the same. That's the aim. You're trying to get them the same. Next step, I'm going to multiply the 6x by the minus 3. 6 multiplied by minus 3 is going to give us minus 18. Draw the line underneath them. Same thing again now. I want them to cancel out. And in order for them to cancel out, they have to have different signs. Here I have a positive 6 and a positive 6. So what I do is I multiply the bottom line by a minus. So this becomes a minus 6x. And then the second one will become a plus, because a minus multiplied by the minus will make that a plus. The 6x squared and the 6x squared will cancel. And then I have minus 10x plus 18x. So again, if you can use your calculator, it could help. Minus 10 plus 18 will give you 8x. And my final step is I now need to bring into play this minus 24. Okay, and now we're going to divide all over again. So I'm just going to get rid of my rough work here for a second. And I'm now dividing the x into the 8x. So again, if I do my rough work here, it's 8x divided by x. The x will cancel with the x on the bottom. So that's leaving me with just a positive 8 on top. So again, I'm coming back and putting that on the top of my division line. And my final step is I now come back to this multiplication back down. So I multiply the 8 by the 8x. And then I multiply the 8 by the minus 3, and I get minus 24. Now at this stage, you should always notice that the numbers are the same. You can see here I have 8x minus 24 and 8x minus 24. Now my final step is, remember, you have to change the signs in the bottom line. So that becomes a minus, and the minus in the center will become a plus. 8x, take away 8x is 0, minus 24 plus 24 is 0. So I now have 0 on the final line. If you think back to your primary school days, that was your remainder. My remainder is 0. So my answer is the top of the fraction line, or the division line, which is x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, I hope that helped some people. If you have any queries there, you can put a message into the chat. If not, we'll scroll down in a minute, but I'll just leave it there a second if people are still taking it down. But if you found it helpful, feel free to put in a message there, or if you're still lost on a step. Okay, so we'll move on down now in a second. But as I said, if you're stuck, feel free to put a message in the chat, or if you found it helpful, by all means, put it in there as well if you found it useful. Okay, that's long division. If anyone feels like you want to do another long division at the very end of the session, we can come back and do one more. But I think we'll keep moving through the different types of algebra that you could have in your exams. Okay, so we'll keep going. So next question, and I'm just putting there, geez, I know it's been a bit jumpy at the start there, but if you find it useful, feel free to subscribe to the Tulamaths YouTube channel as well, which would be great. So inequalities. So the question 5 here is asking us to solve the following inequality and plot it on a number line. So inequalities, they are just a bit like our equations. You're trying to solve the inequality. So it's like an equation, as I say. Now, when you're looking at your inequalities, don't get too fixated or too stressed about the bit at the end here where it says x element of n. You might remember from your other chapters like your sets that E just stands for element, which means it's part. So x is part of n. N, if you recall, is a type of number, and it's a natural number. So your natural numbers would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, whole positive numbers, in other words. And then you have your integer numbers and so on. But we'll get to them in a second. Let's just focus in on the natural. So what you're really doing here is you're coming to your inequality, 4x minus 5, less than or equal to 11. Now, you should treat this exactly like if it was an equals, like an equation. I would get out my ruler again, and I would draw my barrier coming down the inequality sign because I don't want to move it. It's a good way of making sure you don't move the inequality sign. And all I'm doing then is I'm treating it just like an equation. I'm moving the minus 5 over the equal sign. So I get 4x less than or equal to 11 plus 5. Because remember, when you change over an equals or an inequality, it changes the sign. So that's giving me 16. And same approach, we divide both sides by 4. So x is less than or equal to 4. 4 divides into 16 4 times. Now the question, if you go back up to it, it said solve the following inequality and plot on the number line. So what I now want to do is I just want to very quickly sketch a number line here. So let's sketch a number line, and I'm going to go, say, from 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just go to 5, and I'll go back to same. So it's just a very quick rough sketch here of my number line. I'll put my arrows on either end to mean it goes to infinity. So the question is saying here, x less than or equal to 4. Now, we remember what we said, our natural numbers, our n, are the whole positive numbers. So my first dot is going to go on the 4 here because it's saying less than or equal to 4. Now, and actually, I'm just going to move it up here. So it's x less than or equal to 4. Look at the way the inequality sign is pointing. This can kind of help you which way you plot them. See the way it's pointing this way. So all my dots have to go that way. So my next dot is going to go on the 3, the 2, the 1. Now I don't put a dot on the 0 because 0 is not natural. The natural numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way to infinity. So the only natural numbers that are less than or equal to 4 are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so that's our first inequality question. If there's any queries on it, feel free to message into the chat. Otherwise, we'll do another type here. Okay, we'll keep going. So the next inequality question we'll take a look at is this one. So again, I'll give people a second or two there if you want to scribble it down on a piece of paper, and you can give it a go at the same time. So again, don't worry too much about the end part here. It's just saying that x is an element of OR. OR stands for real, and real numbers are all types of numbers. Every single number you can think of is real. So fractions, decimals, integers, minus numbers, positive numbers, 0, they're all integers. So all I need to do though is I need to look at 5 minus 2x greater than or equal to minus 7. So that's the inequality I need to solve. So again, I'm going to come out with my ruler. I'm going to draw that barrier coming down. And now I need to solve my inequality. So I'm going to keep the x's to the left. Good practice to kind of keep the x's on the left-hand side of an equals or inequality. So I'm going to move the 5 over here. Now that 5, we don't see the sign in front of it. So if you don't see the sign in front of it, you know that it's positive, so it's a plus. So when that plus comes over, the equal sign is going to change to a minus. So the minus goes with that 2, minus 2x, greater than or equal to minus 7. And as I said, when that 5 comes over, it's going to change to a minus 5. Tidying that up now, I get minus 2x greater than or equal to minus 12. Now, this is the bit that's important. I know some of you be worried when you're in class as to sometimes you change the direction of the inequality sign. You only change direction of the inequality sign when you divide by a minus. So I'll explain what that means. So here now in our question, we have a minus 2 here. So we need to divide across by minus 2. So I'm going to go divide by minus 2, divide by minus 2. So that's giving me x. Now, this is what I mean. The inequality sign here is now going to change. It's now going to go as a less than or equal to. It's flipping the inequality sign. So when you divide by a negative number, it will always change the inequality sign direction. And then minus 12 divided by minus 2 will give you positive 6. Minus divided by minus is a plus. Okay, and now we will put that on our number line again because this question is saying to solve and plot. So let's plot it here now. So once again, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll go to minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. Okay, so that's my inequality, or that's my number line. Now it's telling me the inequality I need to plot is x less than or equal to 6. So less than or equal to 6 means I put a dot on 6. Now it's telling us to go less than or equal to 6. Now we do put dots on all of these. So let's just explain this in a bit of background here. So I'm putting my dots on all these whole numbers because they're all numbers that are less than 6. But if you understand what a real number is, real numbers here are fractions, decimals, everything you can think of. So I could have like 5.5, 5.25, 5.75, 5.1, 5.6, 5.75, 5.8. And what you'll notice is all those millions and billions of dots that you're putting on your number line are actually going to take a solid line. They're actually creating a line. So instead of drawing all these dots, what we do is we literally just draw a solid line down your number line. So when you see a solid line, that means that you're sketching all the real numbers on that number line. And I have a solid dot here on the 6. Okay, so hopefully that answers question 6 there. I'll just mention one other thing on it. I'll just scroll down a little bit here. So if I'm just looking at one other scenario, if the question asked you to sketch, sorry, that's meant to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is very rough here, but just a quick sketch. Imagine, for instance, it asked you to sketch x less than 6. So we would do the same thing. We would bring our solid line up to the 6, but it doesn't include 6, but it does include 6.6, or sorry, 6.9, 6.99, 6.999. It goes up to 6, but not including 6. So rather than drawing a solid dot at 6, we draw an open circle at 6, an open circle at 6. So if it's less than or equal, you draw a solid dot, and if it's just less than, you do a open circle. So that's just a quick bit of revision on inequalities. So I hope everyone is still finding it okay out there. And if you have any messages, put it into the group chat, or if you have any recommendations, if you want me to slow down or go a bit quicker or look back on something, feel free to put it into the chat there. Even it'd be great if someone could put a message into chat to let me know if you're able to hear and see. That would be great. I hope you are. I haven't heard any messages to say otherwise. Okay, so I'll just give it a second there. And as I said, if you could put a message into the chat just to let me know that you are able to hear and see, that would be great, because I haven't heard in a while, but I hope it's working. Okay, so that's a quick bit of revision on our inequalities. We'll scroll on down now and we'll try something else. So what we're going to move on to now is we're going to take a look at how to factorize in maths, how to factorize in algebra. So there's about 3 or 4 different ways and different types of factorizing, and this is the first one. So the question is asking us to factorize the following. Factorize really just means take something out that's common to all of the terms. So as I look at this, I can see that there's a 3 common to both of them, and there's also a letter common to both of them. Well, there's actually 2 letters, but let's do bit by bit. So I can see here there's a number common. The number common is 3. Okay, because there's a 3 goes into 3 and a 3 goes into 6. I can also see here that there's an a here. So I'm going to factorize out a as well. I can also see that the b is in both of them. Now I know here there's a b squared. Now don't forget what b squared means. B squared really just means bb. There's 2 b's there. Okay, so I'm factorizing out 3ab. I'm then going to multiply 3ab by something. And what I'm multiplying it by, when I multiply it by this number, I have to get back to this number, 3ab squared. So 3 by 1 will give you the 3, and ab multiplied by b will get you back to the 3ab squared. So think about it there for a second. If I asked you to multiply them by each other, you would do something like this, and you do 3 by 1 is 3, a by b is ab squared. You then put back in the minus sign between them. And now we figure out, how do I make this 3 become a 6? Well, you multiply 3 by 2 to make 6. And then think about it here. How do I make AB become AB? Well, I don't have to multiply them by anything, only 1. So I could have 2 times 1, but I'm just going to keep it as 2. Again, let's just check it. I'll show you why that is. If I was to draw my arrow here, 3AB multiplied by 2 would be 6AB. And that's it. That's factorizing. You've taken something out that's common to both of them. And that's the first type, and that's perhaps the easiest type to do. Okay, so we'll scroll down to the next type now. So the next type is where you're factorizing by group. So I'll just give people a minute here if you want to take it down, first of all. Now, as you're factorizing, always think, I need to take something that's common I need to take something out that's common to all the terms. Now, as I look at them, is there actually something common to all of them? There's not. You can see here there's a 2 goes into 4, and a 2 goes into 2. But look, no 2 in this one. I then see, okay, look, there's a D here, there's a D here, but there's no D or D in these ones. And if you keep going like that, you'll notice that there isn't actually anything common to all of them. There's an A, no A here, no A here. So in these situations, what we do is we group them. We put them in little pairs. We take the first two, if we can, together, and then we take the second two. Now, you are allowed rearrange them. You're allowed move them around if you have to, but in this case, I don't have to. So as I look at the ones in pink, let's see, is there anything we can factorize out of these two? I can take out a 2, because 2 goes into 2 and 2 goes into 4. And I can also take out a letter. The letter I can take out is A. So I can take out 2A. I then draw my bracket, and I go through these motions once again. What do I need to do to 2A in order to get to 2AC? I need to multiply it by C, because 2A multiplied by C is 2AC. I then come to the second jump. What do I need to do to 2A to make 4AD? Well, 2 by 2 would make 4, and A multiplied by D would give you AD. So I'm putting in 2D. Now the sign also has to go in, so there's a minus here, so I'm going to put the minus in here. So that's the first bracket. Coming to the one now in yellow, I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking something out that's common to both of them. I can see here there's a letter common to both of them, and that letter is B. So I'm taking out the B. My advice to people would be, in the second bracket that you're doing, don't worry about the signs just yet. We'll put them in at the end. So in the bracket, I'm putting in a C, because B times C is BC. And then I'm going to do B times 2D, because B times 2D will get you 2BD. Now, at this stage, I always tell people these two brackets have to be identical. They have to be the same. So in order for them to be identical, trust that the first one is right. So this has to be a minus here. So I'm putting in that minus. And then the sign in front of the B, I'm going to put the plus in here, because B times C is positive B squared, or BC. So I'm happy with my signs now. To finish it, I take this part, C minus 2D, and then I multiply that by the two that are outside of them, this one and this one. I put them in a bracket on their own. So 2A plus B. And now I have factorized. This is the same. So I'm just going to say or. It's the same as 2A plus B times C minus 2D. It doesn't matter what way you write the two brackets. That's like me asking you to do 2 multiplied by 3. We know the answer is 6. Or if I went 3 multiplied by 2, it's 6. So it doesn't matter what way you write when you're multiplying. Okay, so that's factorizing by group. We'll keep moving down, so unless anyone wants me to hold on, put a message in there if you're still taking it down, or you need me to explain it a little bit more. Okay, we'll scroll down, so. Our next type of factorizing this type of factorizing is called the difference of two squares. The difference of two squares. Difference means subtract. There's a subtract sign. Then it says 2, so 2 squares, this one and this one. And then the final part says the number, or the word squares. Squares are powers. So that's really what this question is asking you to deal with. Difference of two square numbers. Okay, so in order to tackle these questions, you need to make sure that every part of your question is a square number. Now, as you look at it, this square here is only going to the x. So that's only telling you that x is squared. And likewise, here, it's only telling you that y is squared. So what I now have to deal with, though, is I need to think about the 9. I need to turn that into a square number. Now, the number multiplied by itself to give 9 is 3. So I'm going to write it as 3 squared x squared, because 3 by 3 is 9. If you can't work that out, you do the square root button on your calculator and you'll get the 3. Then you go subtract. Then you change to 16. You do the square root of 16 and you should get 4. So 4 squared y squared. So 4 by 4 is 16. Now it's up to you. You can change that into 3x all to be squared minus 4y all to be squared. That's the same thing, but you don't need to do that if you don't want to. The reason that holds is, let me show you. If I had 4y all to be squared, remember what squared means. It means by itself. So that's 4y multiplied by 4y. And if I asked you to multiply that, you would go 4 by 4 and get 16, y by y and get y squared. So that's why this bit is that. So when I change 16y squared, I get 4y inside a bracket, and it's all to be squared. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. And then in order to do the difference of two squares, it's a very easy answer as long as you remember what you do. You write down two brackets. One of them has a minus, one of them has a plus. Doesn't matter which goes in which bracket. And then I literally just take this number and I write it in twice. And then I take the 4y and I write it in twice. And that's it. Simple as that. So my answer is 3x minus 4y, 3x plus 4y. I'm just going to do a very quick example 2, just if anyone's taking that one down. For instance, if I made up 25n squared minus 36p squared, that will give you 5 by 5, which is 25, so 5n squared, minus 6 sixes, which is 36, so it's 6p squared. Putting them into the two brackets, one a plus, one of them is a minus, I would have 5n plus 6p, 5n minus 6p. As easy as that. But the key is remembering that one has to be a plus and one has to be a minus, and spotting the difference of two squares. Okay, so that's the difference of two squares dealt with. We might push on down here because I know your evening is going on here. So let's look at our next question, 10. I think there's only about this one and a simultaneous equation to come, so we'll get through these. Now, these are probably the trickiest ones to factorize. Here, you're factorizing a quadratic. A quadratic is something that has a square, an x, and then a number on its own. So x squared, x, and a number. Now, in order to factorize these quadratics, there are many different ways of doing it. I'm literally just going to show one way, just to avoid confusion this evening, and it's called the guide number. Now, in order to do the guide number, what you do is you take the number in front of the x squared, and you multiply it by the constant. The constant is the number on its own at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go 2 multiplied by 14. And 2 multiplied by 14 is 28. Okay, now, next step. I'm now going to find the factors of 28. So the factors are something that multiplies to 28. So I could have 1 multiplied by 28. I could have 2 multiplied by 14. What else could I have? 7 multiplied by 4. Now, I could also have the negative ones. I could have minus 1 by minus 28, minus 2 by minus 14, minus 7 by minus 4. Next step is you're now trying to find the group of factors that add to the 11. So what do I mean by that? If I add the 1 and the 28, I get 29. They don't add to 11, so I'm not using those ones. The 2 and the 14. 2 plus 14 equals 16. They do not make 11, so I'm not using them. The next pair is 7 and 4. So 7 plus 4 is 11. So they're the pair I'm going to use. So I'm needing 7 and 4. So what I do now is I come back to my quadratic and I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite it as 2x squared plus 7x I'm using these now. 7x plus 4x. And then put back in my plus 14. So all I've really done here is I've just rewritten 11 in a different way. I've just written 11 as 7x plus 4. Nothing different. Now what I do is I break them up into groups like the previous example we did earlier. So looking at the first two, I'm going to factorize out x. X is common to both of them. So I'm going to multiply that by 2x plus 7. So x times 2x is 2x squared. X times 7 is 7x. Then I come to the second two, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to factorize 4x and 14. Now, what's common to 4x and 14? It's just plus 2. So I'm going to go plus 2, bracket, 2 by 2x is 4x, and 2 by 7 is 14. Once again, if you think back to earlier, here's the same thing. The bracket is the same. So I have 2x plus 7. And then I group the other two, x plus 2. And that's our answer, 2x plus 7, x plus 2. So that's factorizing quadratics by using the guide number. As I said, there's a couple of other ways you could do it. You could use your minus b formula, your quadratic formula from your log tables. You could do the two brackets. And there's a couple of other ways you can do it. But I just wanted to introduce that way. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'll leave it there for a second. And again, if you could just put a message there, I'd be grateful if that helped, or you need me to clarify anything, or give a thumbs up there on your computer or phone. That would be great, just that I can see that people are using it and getting it. Okay, I think we have just one more question. Just one more question to look at. So I'll scroll on down to it now, and it's everybody's favorite. Oh, well, actually, there's a fraction there as well. Do you want to do a fraction here before? I think we have a fraction, and we'll do a simultaneous equation then to finish. So let's do a fraction, actually. Let's do this one. Just because I know your time is probably precious here. It's nearly 8 o'clock. So we'll try and get two more questions done. So we'll do a fraction and then a simultaneous equation. So fractions, adding or subtracting fractions. In order to add or subtract fractions, you have to get what's known as your common denominator. So in this question, in order to get your common denominator, you just have to multiply the bottoms. What we mean by denominator, we mean the bottom of the fraction. So they're the denominators. Common denominator can always be found by multiplying the denominators by each other. So x minus 3 by 2x plus 1. So that's my common denominator, the number on the bottom. I then rewrite my two fractions. So I'm just writing out my fractions here again. And I'm putting them over my common denominator, x minus 3, 2x plus 1. X minus 3, 2x plus 1. I then put back in my 3 on the top, and I put back in my 4. So next thing you have to do now is you need to figure out what did you do to the bottom of the fraction. So what did we do to the first one? We multiplied it by a 2x plus 1. So see here, there is no 2x plus 1 on that fraction. So what I have to do is I have to also multiply the top of that fraction by 2x plus 1. You're trying to keep the fraction balanced. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do it to the top. I then come to the second fraction. You can see here that I did a x minus 3 on the bottom, because look, there's no x minus 3 on the bottom up here. So again, what to do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So I'm multiplying the top here by 2x, or sorry, not 2x, it's x minus 3. And then I multiply in the top. 3 by 2x will give you 6x. 3 by 1, positive 3. All over my common denominator. And in the second bracket, I'm multiplying in the 4. And that's giving you 4x minus 12. Now, when you're doing out your fractions, you don't need to multiply the bottoms in. If you want to multiply them in, that's up to you. But here, you will get your full marks by leaving them as the brackets. You don't need to multiply them. But in order to get our full marks, though, we do have to tidy up the top of the fraction. We need to put the 6x and the 4x together. So 6x plus 4x makes 10x. And then I'm putting the positive 3 with the negative 12, and 3 take away 12 will give me minus 9. So 10x minus 9 over my common denominator. And that's your simplifying the fraction. Simplifying means write it in its simplest form, usually as a single fraction. So just remember when you're adding fractions, so if I had 2 over 7 plus 1 over 7, that would be 3 over 7. You only add the tops, you never add the bottoms. So that's a quick look over how to add or subtract fractions. We just did one for addition, but it's the same for subtraction. Okay, and we'll finish up now with our last question here, which is on a simultaneous equation. If you're happy with that, I'll scroll down. So solve the following simultaneous equation. Equations have equal signs in it, so that's why they're called simultaneous equations. And simultaneous literally just means one after the other. So we have two of them here, so you're doing them simultaneously, you're doing them together. So when I'm doing simultaneous equations, I write them out twice. I know some people at home might use subbing in, so that's entirely up to you. There's different ways, teachers do them differently, so I'm not telling you to do one way or the other. But what I do is I basically do out the work twice. I'm basically doing out again. So I'm just going to write it out. So I'm writing it out twice here. Draw a line underneath them. Okay, so in simultaneous equations, you're trying to cancel the x's and you're trying to cancel the y's, but you can only do one at a time. So what I'm going to do with the first one is I'm going to try and cancel those x's. In order to cancel those x's, you have to have the same number in front of them. So on the bottom one there, I have a 3. On the top one, I have a 1x. Now, they don't show that 1x, but you can put that 1 in here if you want. So what I have to do is I have to multiply the top line by a 3 in order to make it become 3x. When I multiply the top line by 3, I get 3 times 1x, which is 3x, 3 times 2y, which is 6y, and 3 times 12, which is 36. The bottom line is already a 3x, so I'm not changing it. It's staying the exact same. Then I draw my line. Now, you will hopefully remember from school that you need to cancel these 3x's. But if I look at them now, I have a 3x and a 3x. Well, 3x and 3x makes 6x. I don't want 6x, I want 0x. So I need to take them away. So what I do is, on the bottom line, I change the sign. So that's going to become a minus. This one is going to become a plus. And then the 3 is a positive 3, so it'll become a minus. So you're taking it away. So in simple terms, you're just changing the signs. The 3x subtracts the 3x. I come to the middle. I have 6y plus 5y, both positive, so they make 11. And then I have 36 subtract 3, which is 33. I then divide both sides by 11, and I get y is equal to 11 into 33 is 3. So I now have my y found. Y is 3. Now, I know some of you might be told in school to then sub that in and you get your x. That's absolutely fine. But personally, I just go and do it all over again, because if you can do it once, you can do it again. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to focus in on the y's. I'm going to cancel these. Now, what number does 2 and 5 divide into? I have to divide 2 and 5 into 10. I have to get a common number. So what I have to do here is I have to make 10. So first of all, how do I make that 2 become a 10? I'd need to multiply the top line by a 5. So that'll give you 5 multiplied by x is 5x, 5 multiplied by 2y is 10y, and 5 multiplied by 12 is 60. On the bottom now, I need to make this minus 5y become a 10, so I need to multiply it by 2. So I'm multiplying the bottom line all by a 2. Make sure you multiply everything by the 2. So this becomes a 6x, this becomes a minus 10y, and then 3 by 2 is 6. Draw your line. Now remember in the first one, I said then to change your signs, but be careful. In this one, I don't need to change the signs. See how they're already different. Do that sum in your head. I have a positive 10, subtract a 10, that gives you 0. So I don't change the signs now. So I'm just going to put a line through these. They're cancelling. Then I come to the start. What's positive 5 plus a positive 6? Well, a positive 5 and a positive 6 makes 11. Sorry, that's an x, isn't it? And then that's equal to a positive 60 and a positive 6. Well, putting a positive 60 and a positive 6 together will make a 66. And then to get x on its own, we divide across by 11, which gives us x is equal to 11 into 66, which goes in 6 times. So the value of my x is 6 and the value of my y is 3. So that's our simultaneous equations, and that's our last question. So I hope people found that useful. I'd be grateful, though, if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel as a thanks for going through today. And if there's any queries or questions, put a message into chats there if you found it helpful, or if you feel you want to maybe get another session going at some stage on a particular topic, by all means, put a message into the chat or message me privately if you want. But fair play to you for coming on, the few people there that joined. I hope you found it useful. Yeah, I see something mentioned there about graphing functions of coordinate geometry. Yeah, look, I'll gladly do something on that. Yeah, so like, are you talking there like lines and distances and equations of lines? If that's what you're on about, that's no problem. I'll look into doing something like that, and I'll put a message maybe on my YouTube and TikTok at some stage. Okay, so best of luck with your studies, everybody, and keep in touch. If there's anything I can help out with, send me a message in YouTube or TikTok. So it's Tulamats. Thanks a million. Bye.